What lies behind the walls of a dictator's palace when the regime of Syria's former president, Bashar al-Assad, was overthrown? The world would get a glimpse into the lavish life he lived, one that was kept hidden behind the walls of his opulent palaces. When rebels stormed his palace, they uncovered not just treasures of unimaginable wealth, but shocking secrets that would unravel the carefully crafted image Assad had maintained for decades. What did they find? Family photos that reveal far more than just Assad's political power, but instead glimpses into the bizarre and twisted life of the Assad family. One photo, in particular, would spark widespread ridicule: Bashar al-Assad, half naked, laughing in a palace that no one could have imagined him inhabiting. But that was just the beginning. What else would emerge about the Assad family? What secrets would be exposed that no one could have predicted? On December 8, 2024, the regime of Bashar al-Assad finally crumbled. After ruling Syria for 24 years, Assad's rule came to an abrupt and chaotic end. Before him, his father, Hafez al-Assad, had ruled the country for nearly 30 years, making the Assad family regime one of the longest standing in the modern world. But as history has shown, no dynasty lasts forever. When the end came for Bashar, he fled Syria in a hurry, seeking refuge in Russia with his wife and children, where they were granted political asylum. Assad's hasty departure left behind much more than a legacy of brutality. It left behind a staggering fortune and a collection of personal belongings that painted a very different picture of the man who had once portrayed himself as the powerful ruler of Syria. What Assad managed to take with him when he fled was a small fortune, billions of dollars, that had been stolen from the people of Syria. However, much of his wealth and personal effects remained behind in his palaces. Rebels who stormed the palace in Damascus and Aleppo believed that the wealth hidden there belonged to the Syrian people, and they were determined to return it to them. What they discovered, however, shocked them and the world. The first thing that caught everyone's attention was the sheer opulence with which Assad and his family lived. A CNN journalist who entered the abandoned palace in Damascus described the extravagance in detailed marble everywhere, ornate ceilings, and expensive furniture that seemed out of place in a country ravaged by civil war. But the real surprise came when she entered the garage. Inside were dozens of luxury cars: Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Cadillacs. The collection was so vast that even the Sultan of Brunei, one of the wealthiest royals in the world, might have been envious. It was unfathomable how Assad's family had accumulated such wealth while the people of Syria suffered through one of the most brutal civil wars in modern history. For 14 years, Syria endured unimaginable violence, with millions of people struggling to survive. And yet, Assad lived in a palace of unimaginable luxury. This stark contrast between the lives of Assad and his people was jarring. But it was just one aspect of the story that would be revealed through the family's photos. Among the most shocking discoveries were the family photo albums that were left behind. These photos were never meant to be seen by the public, yet they exposed a completely different side of Bashar al-Assad. For 24 years, Assad had built a reputation as a strict authoritarian leader. The world saw him as a serious, powerful figure, always in a business suit, poised and polished. He was a welcome guest at international events, shaking hands with world leaders, always presenting himself as the dignified ruler of Syria. Even as the civil war exposed his brutality, Assad continued to maintain this carefully constructed image. But the photos found in his abandoned palaces told a very different story, revealing a more human side of the man behind the suit. One of the most talked about photos that emerged showed Assad in a completely different light. In this photo, he was half naked, wearing only his underwear, posing in a way that many Syrians found laughable. In another photo, Assad was seen shirtless with a young woman sitting on his head. Her identity remains unknown, but it left many wondering who she was. Yet another photo showed Assad standing in his underwear and tank top, casually posing in his kitchen. It was difficult to reconcile this image with the dictator who had once been so meticulously polished. Many began to joke that these bizarre photos revealed something deeper about Assad's personal life, perhaps a twisted need to maintain dominance even in the most private moments. But Assad's eccentricities were not limited to his own behavior. Among the photos was one that featured his older brother, Basil al-Assad, from 1993. Basil is seen riding a horse, but the real surprise in this photo is the woman standing next to him, Jordanian Princess Haya. the former wife of Dubai's ruler. What was the connection between Princess Haya and the Assad family? This discovery raised many questions about the family's network of relationships and the hidden connections that shaped their rule. However, the family photos would also reveal even darker and more disturbing secrets. One of the most chilling images that surfaced was a family portrait featuring Assad's maternal cousin, Ahab Mahfouz. At first glance, it appeared to be a typical family photo, but there was one detail that immediately caught everyone's attention. Ahab was wearing a t-shirt with the image of Adolf Hitler on it. Hitler, remembered as one of history's most notorious villains, was responsible for the deaths of millions of people during World War II. To wear a shirt with his image was a statement that no one could ignore. Was it meant to provoke shock? Was it a misguided fashion statement? Or did it symbolize something far darker, given the Assad family's reputation for brutality? It was hard not to see this as a reflection of their views on power and control. Could this shirt be a symbol of admiration for authoritarian rule? Or was it simply a statement made to shock the world? Some believed it was a sign of rebellion, a way for Ahab to show his defiance, while others suspected it was a sign of admiration for dictatorships and the power they wield. Regardless of the reason, the photo added another layer of darkness to the already sinister legacy of the Assad family. It was a chilling reminder of the authoritarian rule that had shaped Syria for decades. The story of Ahab Mahfouz and his infamous t-shirt ended in tragedy. On December 7, 2024, just one day before Damascus fell into the hands of the Syrian opposition, Ahab was killed while trying to flee the city. He was traveling with his brother Yadlo and others when they were ambushed. Yad survived but was badly wounded. This was just one of many tragic tales that came from the fall of the Assad regime. While Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia, many of his relatives were left behind, unprotected and vulnerable to the chaos that ensued. As Assad escaped to the safety of Moscow, his relatives were abandoned to fend for themselves. This act of betrayal shocked even those who had remained loyal to Assad for years. Assad had presented himself as a strong leader who would stand by his family and his people. Yet when the moment of truth arrived, he chose to abandon everyone: his uncles, cousins, and extended family. He fled with only his wife and children, leaving those who had stood by his side to face the wrath of the rebels. This betrayal revealed much about Assad's true character, a man who demanded loyalty from those around him, but was unwilling to return that loyalty when it mattered most. His actions showed that when his own survival was at stake, he was willing to sacrifice everyone who had trusted him. Even Assad's younger brother, Mar al-Assad, was left behind to face the consequences of Bashar's escape. Mar had been one of his closest allies, a key figure in Syria's military. Yet, when the regime collapsed, Mar was left to face the anger of the rebels while Bashar sought refuge in Russia. This act of abandonment not only shocked the Assad family, but also left a lasting stain on Bashar's legacy as a leader. His betrayal of his own family members, those who had stood by him through thick and thin, painted a picture of a man who cared more about his own survival than about those who had given everything to support him. Bashar al-Assad's fall from power was not just the end of a regime. It was the end of a carefully constructed facade that had concealed the true nature of the Assad family. The photos, documents, and stories that emerged from his abandoned palaces revealed a man who had lived a life of unimaginable luxury while his people suffered. They exposed a man who, when faced with the collapse of his regime, chose to save himself at the expense of everyone who had placed their trust in him. And in the end, it was these secrets, the family photos, the bizarre habits, the connections to figures like Hitler, that would reveal the truth behind the dark legacy of Bashar al-Assad and his family.